Good afternoon, everybody. Well, welcome to the February First Friday at the Cedars McPherson College. And my name is Jacob Strecker. I'm the Director of Development here at the Cedars. And I just want to give a warm welcome and a thanks to everybody for coming out and braving the cool conditions. It's not as cold as it was yesterday, so that's a plus. It did say, I saw last night on the news that Goodland had a record low high of 5 degrees. So we're not as bad off as they are. I want to thank McPherson College for coming and doing this and continuing to provide great educational programs for our campus and our residents here at the Cedars. I'm going to introduce Steve Gustafson, who's going to introduce our guest speaker today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. I couldn't help but think of a story as Jacob was doing his introduction. Some of you know I spent a number of years in Chicago prior to coming to McPherson College. I knew a pastor on the near north side, and he said, you know, the weather was so bad today on the near north side of Chicago that only the aged and the infirm could make it. And I think that a lot of us can relate to that when we think of the life of the church. It is indeed a privilege this afternoon to introduce my colleague Ann Zerger. Ann has strong roots in the Mennonite Bethel College tradition, and I promised her we wouldn't hold that against her. She is Associate Professor of Art at McPherson College, teaches classes in sculpture and in photography and art history, as well as other areas. And you might do some jewelry as well, and I'm sure some of you may have seen her work when it's on display in Friendship Hall. She's had some rather significant recognitions lately. She's been invited to the Netherlands, where her work has been shown. And work has been selected for a show in New York City as well as other places. She started out at McPherson College on a part-time basis, but the number of students in her art classes grew so significantly that the college was able to make that a full-time position, and we're really delighted to have her and her contributions to the visual art program at the college. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Ann Zerger. And I should say one other thing. Some of you may have known her. She worked with the Aluminics. She's a PA. Was at Family Practice Associates over in Mountain Ridge prior to coming to McPherson College. So like a number of us, she's had several different career pathways. So Ann Zerger.
Is this on? Or is it on? Okay. This is a new experience to do this with a microphone, so I'll have to get adjusted to that. It's a great honor to be here. I really appreciate being invited, and it's going to be fun to do such a large group, work with such a large group of demonstrations. So bear with me as I try to get you in the back to see how my hands move. I will be demonstrating, telling you kind of things to do, and then as I do in all my classes, I will move around and help you individually. So if you can't figure out what I'm doing up here, don't despair, because we'll go around. I wanted to just make a note, since Steve mentioned me working as a PA, and he was talking about the cold and weather and stuff. One of the things that I always noticed, which made me admire the older generation, is when I was working in medicine, on the coldest days, the snowiest, icy days, the patients that would cancel would be the young and the children. The older folks never ever canceled. And I'd always ask them, it's icy, aren't you afraid of falling? And they go, no, we gotta get up and go, today is the day. And so it was always fun to have that occurring. But as Steve said, this is kind of my second career, although I've done art my whole life. My first area was in medicine, and my main artistic venue that I like to work in is figurative art. I do a lot of sculpture with people in it, and my medicine knowledge has really helped in that. But getting to here, one of the things that we first do when I am introducing students to three-dimensional art, which is a little bit different than drawing and painting, is working with wire to create a drawing in space. I don't know how many of you have been here when Wayne was here and did his gestural drawings. That's kind of a first kind of thing that you do with learning how to do the pencil and free up. What we're going to do today is take the ideas that Wayne did with his drawing on pencil, and we're going to do it in space. Dimension. And something to think about in sculpture, which is really kind of challenging, is that something, you see it in all dimensions. And so a lot of times we have trouble with that where it just looks flat and then you can't tell what it is from one side to the other. So when you're doing your drawings, you're going to be doing a drawing today in wire. And all of you tables should have an example. These were all made by students who had never done anything before. We're going to be using thinner wire just because it's a little bit easier. And they looked at an object, which you can or don't have to do, and they did like a scribble kind of drawing with wire. And the trick with a wire sculpture is to have as little wire as necessary to get the image. If you get too much wire, it gets muddy and you can't quite see the form. But the other thing that is happening here is that it's capturing, let me see if that helps a little bit instead of trying to make, it's capturing volume by how the line goes around in space. It makes it look like it's solid and has a form. And so as you're doing your wire sculptures, and I'll show you some tricks of the trade, you want to think about making something have a form in all directions. Here is a hat. I don't know if you guys can see that. You know, if you have the purse, the cup, your shoe, anything, if you want to try to make something that you have, you certainly can do that. But what is a common way to think about it is, first of all, drawing it on a piece of paper. You know, how could you take something and draw it with as few lines as possible, and then you take your wire and you start moving around with it. This is one way of doing a wire sculpture. Another way that we'll probably do more today, I don't know if you can see this, is I'll pass it around. It is a little horse figure or whatever, and it's with the wire that we did that we'll be using today. I have a volume one here, a little box, and I'm going to kind of show you how to do this, but I'll pass this around, and this is capturing space, so you can kind of look at that. This one, we'll start it here, is you can also just scribble, and you can wrap the wire in many different directions and start making a form. So it doesn't matter today what you do, and if you make a mistake, the wonderful thing about wire is you just stretch it back out. If it has wrinkles in it and you want to get out of the wrinkles, hopefully nobody will be upset. But a real easy way to get a wrinkle out of your wire is to just rub it like that, and then you have a nice straight edge again, and you can start all over again. So the main thing that I really want you guys to do is have fun and enjoy it and see what you can make. So that's what we're going to do today. Any questions at all so far? You all should have this piece of paper. This is a visual, which since you can't, you know, right up here, some of you can see me better than others. But this is kind of some of the things I'm going to be showing you. There's a lot of different ways you can do wire sculpture. There is no wrong or right way. And so, you know, you'll be exploring. But you can wrap it in a million different ways, go back and forth and get something. You can capture it like this, where you just use as few lines as you need. You can use one piece of wire to make your whole thing. A lot of students find that real challenging. They want to see if they can make the whole thing with one piece of wire. Or you can make it with multiple wires. So I'm going to demonstrate, I'll try to hold up here, and I'm going to use a thicker wire so that you can kind of see what you're doing. If you get into wire sculpture and you really want something that is more firm like this is baling wire. You can get it at the hardware store, and it holds its weight a little bit better than the thinner wire that we have. So you might, if you want to get into this. So I'm going to cut off a piece, probably bigger piece than I need. And I'm just going to demonstrate, I'm not going to do a lot of fancy things up here. I'm just going to show you some basic moves, and then I'm going to move around and help you do your own individual pieces. I think that will be much more interesting. So as you see that square, as it goes around, I'm going to show you how you make a box without having to do every line. You could do every single line by, making 4 square things and putting it together, but you can also make it capture the box by having as few lines as possible. So if you're bending with wire and you want a sharp edge, just use your thumbs at that angle. And I don't know if you guys can see, but I made a nice sharp edge. And then I'm going to, bear with me as I'm thinking, because I'm doing this as I'm thinking, so it's hard to demonstrate. I'm thinking about how I'm going to do a box with showing all of the sides, but not having all the line there. Having something called implied line, which your eye puts together. So I have a line here and a line here, and I'm going to make a box. So right now I'm going to go in that direction. So you see I have a start. You guys see that? I have a start. So now I'm going to start thinking. I could go and make all of the lines, but I want to play around with it so that it is not quite. So I'm going to make a bend here, and I'll show you what I'm doing here. I may not have enough wire. Okay. So I made a bend here. So I have this side, this side, this side, and then this side is going to, your eye is going to end up connecting here, that side. So now I'm going to come over here and sometimes you have to put it down on, and I'm running out of wire, so I'm going to have to add some more wire. But are you starting to see how I am starting to capture a box shape? You guys starting to see that? Now, some directions like this, there's not much there, so I have to add something here. So I'm going to take some more wire. This is nice greasy wire. That's another reason we aren't using it here, because I just think you guys want to get dirty fingers. Sculpture is one of those things that you get dirty in. Okay, so we want to wrap this together here. When you're doing wire sculpture, sometimes you have to hold down things with tape, and I will hold this up in a minute. I just can't quite get it manipulated. That. And the thing about wire is you just keep bending it around, and sometimes it will take a little time to get totally there, but now if I really want this to be stable, this isn't quite long enough for that, but let's see if we can. I'm going to get another little piece here to tie it together so you can kind of see. The trick when you're making something really specific like this, you want all the corners to match exactly. Otherwise the eye won't fall and follow those lines. So I need to attach something here. I will show you this in just a second. I know it's kind of frustrating when you can't see what somebody's hands is doing. But we'll go through this here in just a second. Okay, so you guys see the box? Okay, and you know there maybe I really need something in here because it gets lost a little bit. And you can make these so that they will stand up. I mean, that stands up totally by itself. You could put, do something on the inside. To make something that goes in the round, like a jar, a lot of times people think to do coils. You just coil up. Well, there's more interesting ways to do that. Show you a couple of those techniques, and then we'll kind of break. So what you're looking for when if you're trying to make an item like a coffee cup here, is the planes that it has. This is a plane, this is a plane, that's a plane on the inside. And so instead of just coiling, you could start with a coil, and we'll start with a coil here. Okay, and then you can come up, and I'm not necessarily making that cup, but you can come up here, and you can do similar things that I did with that box. I can make something that goes around like this. So that I start creating a volume. And then I can come back down like this. And start creating something that has a circular view without just going around and around in circles. And so I don't know if how well you can see that, but it kind of has a cylinder shape. Okay? With this particular thing here, did everybody get to see this little thing here? Because I'm going to show you how to do one of these. Because this might be, this is and my hands are really dirty here. I have to wash them.
Did everyone get the box?
So with this kind of wire here, this is stiffer kind of wire, and it's a little harder to do that kind of fast sketching. So with this kind of wire, if you want to just start seeing if you can make something, whatever it can be, these are more making a particular idea, and you can do that with a smaller wire, which is what that box is. But say I just wanted to make something like a human being or an animal or whatever, I can just start start scribbling like you would with a pencil. Let me think what I can make real easy.
I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Now, apparently, you're not supposed to have different pieces? You do it all with one piece?
You can
of
do
wire?
it any way. You can do it, this square here that
Well, if you did a square box, why couldn't you do 2 squares and then hook them together?
you could.
Okay.
What I was showing you here is a way of looking at doing it without having to do all of the line work. And that takes a little bit more thinking. It makes it a little bit more interesting, and it has more of a volume. But you can do, there is no right or wrong with this. It's, you know, it's just creating what you want to do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so let me think what I can make really easy.
You don't know. How do you know how much wire you need? I mean, how long a piece do I need?
You don't, you know, it's kind of like how much, you know, how much paper are you going to do when you're scribbling? Take a length and just start playing with it. And I usually take a little bit more than I need. So if I was wanting to create, we'll just start seeing what comes out. That's usually kind of the best way. Let's see what shape comes out. I'm just kind of starting and wrapping, and it's just like scribbling with a pencil, okay? So I have some little shape here that kind of looks like an animal with big ears. I don't know, we may have a non-realistic animal here. So now I'm going to make some legs, okay? And I'm going to come back here and make the other set, four-legged animal. And I can twist these here. I don't know, can you see this at all? Guys, can you see anything that I'm doing? There's ears up here, a head. I'll pass this around. And I'm just like I would draw on a piece of paper. You know, I might draw the head first, and then the ears, and then the legs. You do the same thing with wire. You can go back and forth. You can go back to the head. You can come around, unwrap it. So now I'm going to make kind of the body here, and going back here. And again, I may not have enough wire, so I may have to add some more wire. So I'm going to wrap this area here to give it kind of a body shape. And you can pull it apart if you need a little bit more depth and width. And I'm going to get some more wire. So if you think of it kind of, this kind of sculpture here that I'm showing right now, if you think of it as a scribble drawing that you do on paper, and the only difference is you just are doing it in space with wire. You can go back and forth over something over and over again, just like you do on paper. So now I'm making the other part of the legs. And we have somebody with a tail and one leg that's a little shorter than the other. And then you can start playing with, you know, you can be having one leg up, one leg running back, and, you know, very quickly, it's just, you know, a nondescript animal, so, you know, I'll just kind of pass this around. And it's just moving wire in just some fun ways, and that's we can name that animal. It's not a real, I'm just kind of making a four-legged creature. So, any questions at all? I think the best thing to do right now is for you guys to start playing. I'm going to find a place where I can wash my hands, and then I will come around. If you have an idea of something you would like to make, I will put these sculptures on the table so you guys can look at them, and if you want to make anything in particular, I will be glad to help. Here's, you guys look at that. I will, is there a place I can wash my hands? That's why we didn't use a black wire. Everybody be all.
we're doing.
There is no right answer in art. You know, that's the wonderful thing about it. That's one thing I love about in medicine, there was a right and wrong answer. And I had to learn those right and wrong answers. In art, there is not. Let me think about it. So you got it started here. This wire might not be the strongest for that. So you're probably going to need to do. You know what? With this thin wire, go kind of small. It just doesn't have the structure that this stuff has. And if you find you really are having fun with this, and you want to make big stuff like this, then you want to get this kind of wire, and it's called baling wire. You can get it at a hardware store.
Do you have a class that just does wire?
No, I have a class. We do this as one project. In my classes, we explore a lot of different things about sculpture and three-dimensional design. This is their very first project of introduction into three-dimensional design. So this is their first introduction. I don't know, just for some art history tidbits, on your paper, there's a sculpture down there by Calder. I'm sure you all are familiar with mobiles that are hanging down and move in space. You know what I mean by a mobile? Well, this artist invented the mobile. And it wasn't until about the 1940s that there was such a thing as a mobile. It was like a really amazing thing to think about, hanging something out of the sky that would move. Sculpture until then had always been really solid things like stone or bronze or wood. And so he did that. He also did these great sculptures out of wire. He would do a personal image of somebody, and he was famous in New York City among his art friends. He would make little figures, and he made a circus. And he would, every Friday night, all his friends would come because he would do this animated circus with his wire sculptures. He would have trapeze artists, and he'd have them falling down, and then there would be an ambulance that would come and take them away. And they were all made out of wire sculptures like this one here. And he was just, people just loved his whole animation with it. So he is probably one of the originals with learning and teaching wire sculpture. But he would also make, a self-portrait of you out of a wire sculpture. We should, I don't know how this deal works, but in my classes we always look at pieces that people make. I don't know if you'd be interested in it, but I think as we get towards the end, we should maybe set them in a place where we can all see or walk around or whatever, because I think you guys made some great pieces, interesting pieces.
Just a couple of closing comments as we wrap up. The needle nose pliers are complements of plant operations at the college and auto restoration. And we certainly want to express our appreciation this afternoon to Ann Zerger. This has been a fun, interactive session. Someone like I finds myself being a bit challenged and appreciative of people who handle the medium well. Ann, thank you very much. We appreciate you. Well done.
Thank you very much.